Hey, welcome back to Case Studies. I'm with my friend Danesa Raghulal.
Yes.
And so we're in the same living group at OPM. It's a Harvard executive program. And the way, these programs work is there's 160 people in the class.
Yeah.
But then you have your living group that's a subset of the class, and it's 8 people. And I got lucky enough to have you in my living group. And so it's been fun for me to get to know you and your story and culture and upbringing. And so anyway, really excited to have you.
It's like a whole different world, right?
It truly is.
Yeah.
No, and it's like
West to east.
No, and I think about like my life, and my life gets very narrow.
Yeah.
And I get in my world that's a very narrow, small world.
In the middle of Utah.
Yeah, in Utah. Yeah, it's like a sub-market. It's, and you zone out and you just realize.
Yeah. But I think it's possible to be in that zone anywhere in the world, though.
I think so. I think all of us,
Yeah, in a way or the other. I think this Harvard experience kind of opens people up to like a worldly view.
Yeah. No, so it's been so great. So I want to dive into your story. So you have like this beautiful story that's pretty rare as far as like, go back to the business that you're in.
Yeah.
And where it starting like with your family.
So what I do is pretty much bake. So I do everything from breads to cookies to cakes, so on, confectionery, basically.
So, but give context like from like a U.S. lens.
So if I had to compare to a company that most Americans would be able to relate to, it'd be like Hostess, maybe.
Yeah.
Pepperidge Farm, maybe.
Yep.
But we also do a lot of milling. So like, wheat flour and varieties of wheat flour.
So kind of like a vertically integrated, you actually have your own mill to like do that stuff as well.
Exactly. I think we vertically integrated very early on.
Yeah.
Which has helped us grow our portfolio in a much better manner.
Yeah. So where did it start?
So it started with my dad. So he used to live in America. He went to Wharton. He started some seafood trading, and he made a lot of money with that. He lost a lot of money with that because fish being a perishable item, I think he had some losses with trade because he was based out of America and so on. He went back. He was in a complete relax mode. He didn't know what he wanted to do. And that's when he realized while he was living in his hometown that he either wanted to do milk or bread. So he'd kind of delved into both the business models. And this is probably like 5 or 6 years before I was born. And at that point, he found bread more attractive. He went and did a little bit of internship with some of the top bread firms in India at that point. And he realized that bread is a game that he wants to be in for. And only after launching bread did he realize that, not realize, he knew it, but only after launching did he realize how impactful it is when the other market leader is a government subsidized company, and when you're not a government subsidized company and your raw material prices are so different.
Yeah.
And you have to compete with the market leader. So that's when he decided to vertically integrate. And then when we vertically integrated to milling, mills are huge. So we had, of course, a lot more flour than that's required for bread. And that's when we kind of diverted into cakes and so on. And today, I think one of the first cakes we launched with was something called as a plum cake. So plum cake is widely had in, I think, most Christian populated areas during Christmas. In India, at least, that's what we call it. It's like a fruit cake almost, soaked.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. So that was one of the first things my dad launched other than bread after his mill. And that was a huge success. It was a huge success to a point where till today we're still known as a plum cake company. And even though we do so much more, I think what we're most widely known for till date
is our first product.
Is our first product.
How cool is that? That the very first one ended up being that big of a success.
Technically not the very first one, right? Technically bread was our
was the first one.
Yeah, but cake for sure. I think it ended up being that when we were you know how Nielsen does all these fancy reports,
Yeah.
and we were looking through them. We realized that we're like the world's largest plum cake manufacturer.
What?
Yeah. But I don't know if it's because people don't want to make plum cakes or what it is. But no, we do quite a big impact during the Christmas season with plum
Yeah.
cakes. Yeah.
So goes to Wharton. So obviously your dad's smart.
Yes.
I mean, to get in to Wharton, tough.
Back in the day from India.
Yeah, tough to get into, and for him to like navigate.
Yeah, as a 17-year-old in America.
No, it's insane.
Yeah.
So he goes to the U.S., but he's an entrepreneur. Like he's like obviously like,
Yeah.
is that just the culture? Is the Indian culture entrepreneurial, or is it like just your family? Because I know you went to Babson. Your brother's an entrepreneur.
I'm not sure if it's in the culture or if it's just me there, because India is a very, very wide country with like 100 different type of people, and I think there are certain sectors, like a certain religion segments or so on, that are like more into the business field. For example, the Gujaratis, the Marwadis. We are not one of those. We are actually from down south, but I do think that there is an entrepreneurial spirit amongst us.
So
maybe.
talk to me a little bit about that, because India is massive.
Yes.
I mean, it's 1.3 billion, 1.4 billion. Like
billion
it's,
5, I think.
yeah,
right?
like it's
yeah,
4 times bigger than America.
yeah, for sure.
Like it's
in population, but in size, we're the size of Texas
yeah,
almost.
it's so big. It's like so
Yeah.
many people, but it's also like highly diverse religiously. And this was something that coming out to this program, almost every different person that I've met has, you know, there are some that are the same beliefs, but there's a lot of different beliefs.
Yeah.
And so talk to me about kind of like the major sects.
So Hinduism is a religion, but it's more of a way of life, I would say, if I had to put it in words. We are very accepting of everybody, and
Yeah.
I think that's the reason why India has so many religions that are like thriving almost peacefully, or as peacefully as it can be.
Yeah.
But I think going into like different religions is like quite complicated and out of my scope of knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't want to say something
But specifically like with you, like your faith, you guys grew up.
So for me, faith has been like a path of discovery. So it started off with my father realizing that spiritual quotient was very important for younger generations. So he would make me sit through like these talks by priests every Tuesday. And they would talk about like these fun stories and so on. I don't really remember much of it if you ask me to like tell what exactly I was taught.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it went into intuition and the way I think.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that was the main way I got into the realm of spirituality.
Yeah.
It was a little bit by force or by a little bit by a push.
Yeah, your parents saying like this is
Yeah,
important.
just go for this
Yeah.
Tuesday night every day,
Yeah.
every week. But initially I would just be like counting minutes to go. And then slowly like I would find like certain aspects of it that I connected to. And mind you, at this point I'm like 7 or 8.
Young.
So I'm like very young.
Really young.
Yeah, very young. So I think from the time I was very young, my dad always made me do things that are out of my comfort zone. Like we have this thing called Economic Times. And in Economic Times is a newspaper. And in that newspaper, there's a part called editorial pick or editorial story. And that is the most hardest part of the newspaper. The rest of it, I can at least like read and understand. That is like hardcore economic principles and so on. And when I remember, I'm below 10 for sure. And it became a rule where I had to like read the editorial and summarize to him.
What?
And I wouldn't even understand so many of the words. And he'd be like, that's okay, just learn it and like, just tell me. So yeah, I was made to like always bite more than I can chew. So, interesting.
No, it's like, it's amazing. I'm like
Yeah.
taking notes as a dad. Like this seems like a
I don't know. Do you want a daughter like me?
I absolutely want daughters like you. So you kind of grew up with you and your brother, and you're the oldest.
Yes.
Obviously, like in a really successful family.
I would say that, yes, my granddad did make a lot of money, but he always believed in giving it back. So even before the concept of giving back to society existed as like a norm, he was one of those people that was extremely politically influential, business field influential, like top gun in his state.
Wow, this is your grandpa.
Yeah, and he had like an amazing story. He pretty much swam to Sri Lanka as a 14-year-old boy, and leaving his house, abandoning it, writing a letter. And he comes back. I remember, so, I mean, of course, he kept going and coming back after he reached a certain level. His family was always based out of India and so on. But the true miracle is that, like, I remember in 2012, maybe almost like 10 years after he passed away, we went to Sri Lanka, to the area where he kind of lived in, because my grandmom really wanted to see that area and so on. And I remember going there, and we went into this random shop that my grandmom told us through her like vague memories or so. And when we went there, there was this clock that said, it was like this very old ancient clock, and it was a textile shop, and it said like elite in a very, very like, we could barely see it in that clock, but it said elite in it. And I remember my granddad always saying that he got inspiration from a clock in a store he lived in. He
What?
worked in, yeah. So we kind of saw that clock, and we were like, okay, this is weird. So we just asked somebody standing nearby that, do you know this man called like Raghavan from like Kerala, from India? And then he was like, of course I know. He's the guy that like came with nothing, and when he was leaving, he gifted all the politicians some imported car or something like that. So that was his story. He came back.
Just like wildly industrious.
Wildly entrepreneurial,
Yeah.
I would say. Yes. So that's how but my dad didn't take over any of the businesses that he started, because my granddad used to do mainly textiles and liquor, and I think it didn't spark my dad's interest enough for giving it the 100% time that
He wanted to.
he wanted to.
Yeah.
And that's when the food industry started, and that's when he started like training us for it. I remember we would always be talking about business.
All the time.
Not all the time, in parts in a day for sure, like a few times in a day for sure, every day. It could be like my mornings could maybe start with like the stock market, and this is like when I'm like 3 or 4. My dad would be like, okay, look at the newspaper and tell me, is the market like up or down? So I would just like count the greens and count the reds, and then be like, make my calculated guess if it's up or down.
What?
Yeah.
This is insane.
Yeah.
This is insane.
And then like we would always have dinner conversations where it would be something as small as like suggest a brand name for a product, or suggest like, what do you think about this packaging?
So he's like hardcore entrepreneur. Like your
Yeah.
dad is like, it's in his bones.
It's in
That's
his-
like, he's waking up thinking about it. He's going to bed thinking about it.
Exactly. And I think that was the culture of the whole house. We all felt that connected to the business. Like, it would be every day evening we would get a basket of like today's production. So we would have to like look through, taste through, and then he will like give feedback. He will ask us for like
What?
feedback, things like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So where's your mom fit in this mix?
My mom is my dad's executive assistant.
So she's like in the business too.
She is more of only, her work is him. Like
She's
managing
running him.
Yes. Yes.
She's running him like a business.
Yeah. And he needs her like anything. He's like attached to her by the hip. Like he can't go for business trips without the whole family.
Really?
Yeah. He's the kind of person that believes that we should all experience everything together. Yeah.
How fun. Okay, so you grow up. The business is very well established, like one of the biggest players in the world in like certain subtypes of what you produce. You came to the U.S., so you went to Babson College, which is like a historically like really famous entrepreneurship college in Boston. And was that choice deliberate? Because you obviously had other options of different schools to go to. Why Babson?
Why Babson? Because when I looked through the course and then I spoke to a few people who had graduated from Babson, I couldn't come out with a better fit for me, honestly. Be it having to start your own business, having to go through the pitching, having to go through organizational structure, having to go through, business dynamics that pop up in real world.
Yeah.
Like when you're 17 or 18 and you kind of get it's like a microscopic lens. Like it's not the whole business per se, but it kind of gives you like an overall view or a telescopic view of like what a business would be like.
Yeah.
You can kind of imagine like with different scales how it would be. So that was one, and it was a very immersive experience, be it having to like shadow different CEOs throughout your different courses, or having to like work behind kitchens to optimize operational efficiency. I had to work in like a seafood restaurant, in legal seafood, and I don't know how different seafoods look like, right? And we were trying to optimize like order to table turnaround time and to figure out how to, optimize that and reduce the time by a minute or so on. So it was quite challenging. The smell of fish as a vegetarian.
Yeah.
That was interesting. Being in the kitchen, like seeing all of that was very interesting. But but experiences like this truly molded me to the person I am, and I think molded me to be able to handle the challenges that I think life has thrown onto me.
Yeah. So fast forward to you finish up college, and then you went back and like jumped into the business.
Yeah, I went back and jumped into the business. I did not envision myself doing this for sure. So while I was in Boston, I was like looking at these food incubators. I was like talking to these startups that I could potentially like use my infrastructure to scale up and, play the game of providing good quality food to Americans in, well manufactured methods, bring about scale, good quality of ingredients, and so on. I told this to my dad. I was like, "You're a Wharton graduate. I'm a Babson graduate. Let's start like a consultancy firm that specializes in food industry. We'll set up our own incubator in some time, or we'll start with investing in a few or so on." And he was like, "Okay, fine, Danesa. All this is a beautiful idea. If this is what you want to do, you do that. But first, come and learn your infrastructure well in India, so that you're able to rightly pick the right partners for us." So I was like, "Fine, I'll do that." I was like, "Okay, not more than like 6 months. Am I going to be there?" And he was like, yeah, don't worry about it. Just come now. And I was like, "Are you sure? Can I come 6 months later?" He was like, "No, come now." And I think it was like God calling me or whatever. But like, I got to work with him for only 3 months as a graduated person.
Yeah.
Because after that, he went through a neurological issue and he was not in the best fit to be able to work. And then that's when I stepped in and kind of had to swim in the deep end for a bit, trying to figure out how exactly and what I want to do with the company and what should be my strategy. But now it's been a few years and I'm more settled with the way the company is growing and where we are at. And now it's time to take the next leap. So, yeah.
Yes. What does that look like? Like when you look forward, because you kind of took over the company at like a really young age.
Yeah.
Like I think like anybody, I think about myself stepping into that role and like even just thinking about it make me like really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was a very uncomfortable experience because also I'm like doing all of this in India where, look at OPM itself. It's only 20% women. And now you take 20% women, you put that into India. So there's not even 20%. There's like 5%. And then you put that into like below 25. And then there's just one. That's me. So it was quite interesting to navigate.
Because when you took it over, it was like top line revenue. Like what was top line revenue when you got started?
Let's not get into it.
Okay.
Because my competitors and like numbers and so on.
But like
so our revenue has gone up by at least, I think we could say we've almost doubled. So
almost doubled since you took over. But a real number, Like you guys are like a real player.
Yeah, we do decent numbers. We do, like, as a group, we do around 200 million and
Okay,
stuff.
so it's a real business, and so to go in and grow it. So like, where do you go from here?
I think there's a huge way to go from here. I think I'm still like a speck in the map, right? And the industry that I'm in, I still have a lot of geographical locations within India to tap into. I have a lot of international opportunities that I still need to tap into. So growth there is immense opportunity, but I have to like allocate my time and efforts and my team's time and effort in the right direction. And I do see myself as a food conglomerate of sort. I do want to be seen as I don't know, maybe I want my children to be having a company that's somewhat like a Mondelez of India.
Yeah, that you've got brands that fall under it. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about leadership. So you kind of went into it and described it, but one, being a woman in leadership, but two, going back to India, where it's more male dominated, even in India than it is here.
Yeah.
And then three, at your age, and having to step into a company
Yeah.
that has a lot of men,
Yeah.
and not just a lot of men that are twice your age.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what you learned as a leader. What were the leadership principles that you kind of said, this is my philosophy on leadership?
So there is this saying in the Gita. So Gita is, I would say, my holy Bible. I mean, it is our holy Bible in the Hinduism, but it's my holy Bible of management. And I think I would really recommend for you to also read it.
The Gita.
Gita.
And is this like the holy book of Hinduism?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is the holy book of
I'm
Hinduism.
showing like my ignorance.
But what the Gita also is, it's a beautiful management book. So it teaches you to do business not just from a profitability and a revenue point of view, but also your purpose in this world and also your self purpose in this world and like what are you really giving back?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is this saying that comes from that called karmanya vadikarasto ma phaleshu gadajana. It basically means that you do the work that your karma has, or your soul's karma is carrying in this life, and if you keep expecting the fruits are not going to be seen to you, and that you should kind of do it without the expectation of getting the fruit.
It's just like creating good in the world. It's just like
Exactly.
sending good out there without like any expectation of.
Yeah, and you try to do your best and see where it goes. So I think that's one of the principles with which I started working. I was like, okay, let me give my 110%. Let me see what is it that I'll be able to do in the organization, and let's see where it goes from there.
Yeah.
So with that principle is what I pretty much started this.
But how did you do it? Like I'm a 50-year-old guy,
Yeah.
and you've got this kid
Yeah.
that just comes back from Boston. It's bossing me around.
Bossing me around.
Like how do you capture the hearts and minds, and how do you go?
First few months, what I realized is that I've just gone back from Boston after living here for like 4 or 5 years. Imagine my accent. I'm in my head I'm thinking I have no such thing as an accent or like an American accent. And I'm standing there in India, I'm telling things to people, nobody is understanding anything I'm saying. So actually I realized that 1 or 2 months into it that I really have to change the way I speak. Like I need to be speaking in a way that everybody can understand me better. So I think that was one of my first challenges, to get what I'm saying across and ensuring that it's being followed through, because sometimes they find you intimidating, so they just like nod. But then half an hour later, I asked them, like, what did you nod about? And they have no idea what they nodded about. So, yeah, nuances like that. And, it was a combination of a lot of things. Some positive things I had to do, some negative things I had to do.
Where did you screw it up? Like, what were, like, some failures that you're like, I just did not do that right?
Mm, life lessons, right? I don't know. I would say a few maybe missed opportunities with investing in the right time. But I was also like not in the best capital position to make those investments at that
So
time when
some
I think about
opportunities
it.
popped up that, looking back now, would have been great
Exactly.
ads to like build that food conglomerate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I think I was not prepared for it. I don't think our team was prepared for it. I don't think it was the right time for certain
Interesting.
things. Yeah.
Talk to me about faith, and talk to me about how that fits in everything. You got into it a little bit with kind of your, the Gita being like kind of your leadership playbook on how to live and how to lead.
So for me, I've always believed that the soul is neither created nor destroyed. And similarly, energy is neither created nor destroyed. It goes from one form to the other. Similarly, a soul goes from one body to the other to go through these karmic learnings that you have to learn till you're united with the one energy. This has been my philosophy of life that I have kind of grown to believe in the last few years.
Yeah.
I'm still in the process of discovering.
So let me rephrase, and you pick apart the way I understand karma. The way I understand karma is that you get back what you put out. So if you go put out good, that it comes back to you and you receive good. But also, like, if you put out bad, that comes back to you in some way.
So I also believe that a soul sometimes embarks on this journey onto the earth to become more refined.
And the belief is that this isn't the first time you've been here.
Exactly.
That you come in different forms, right? You could come as a plant, you could come as an animal, but that every time that you come back, you learn. And then you kind of keep coming back at like a higher level of being.
Exactly.
But ultimately, like, the end is that you don't come back, right?
Exactly.
That you, like, you
You
become.
reunite with the one energy of sort is what I believe in. Yes.
Like, it's actually like a beautiful religion. And I think even just like the behaviors that it like
instills in
yeah,
you.
no, it really is. Like, I think about what you were describing of this being like your leadership playbook. Like, Tony Robbins is like a big like mentor of mine. Like,
Okay.
and he talks about this concept that business is a spiritual game.
It is.
That, like, your church and your business aren't different things. It's all the same thing. And how you treat people, that's all part of like this spiritual game. And after kind of getting that concept or philosophy, I've treated business way different. I've treated it with kind of a
Detachment.
and like a spiritual energy, just
Yeah.
like I want to go pour my heart, my soul into everything that I'm doing and the people that I'm working with, and like
It's like you have to work but be detached.
which is really hard.
Which is very, very hard.
Yeah.
It is so hard to feel detached sometimes, right? Like I'm so tempted to, be attached to the whole system, but I'm constantly reminded that you have to be detached to what you do.
Yeah. Talk to me about your husband, and talk to me about the process of marriage in India. This is like from a US person, this idea of arranged marriages.
Yeah.
Like,
I think arranged marriages are beautiful.
well, I think they're beautiful too. But they also like if someone was deciding who I was marrying,
So nobody really decides.
but that was kind of my misconception. So go into like how it works.
So I think a lot of people take it as like your parents choose somebody and then you see them on your wedding day and then you get married to them the next day. I'm sure a few hundred years back maybe it happened because people lived so far away from each other that it takes them like 40 days to get to the place of the groom, and then I don't think they make it back and forth a few times. I think they dropped their child and went and so on. But nowadays how it works is that you're kind of connected to people are in your circle through your parents. So it's kind of like Tinder, but handled by the parents.
So
They make these Tinder profiles too. It's quite funny.
no,
Like I hate dancing.
I think about my mom and dad
Yeah, see, I hate
managing my Tinder profile.
exactly.
I'm like, no, absolutely not.
Exactly. So, and like the profiles don't end up being the most accurate thing either. Like in my profile, my mom wrote, I like to dance. I hate dancing. I used to cry during my dance lessons. So it's a bit inaccurate, but also people don't really go too much by the profile. You just see like what they do and you kind of meet them or you talk to them on the phone to see if there's anything there. With my husband, he was one of the first marriage proposals I got when I was like very young. But my dad told his dad that, or whatever. Basically, I was just too young.
And you were how old?
I was like, I don't know. I was still in college, so.
And he was just young. Like he was wanting.
Yeah, I think I keep teasing my father-in-law. I'm like, you really wish for this, you know? So. That was it. And then when I graduated and I came, I didn't think like this guy who I'm married to now, he would still be single because he was at that point like 5 or 6 years older to me.
Yeah.
So, and he was started searching already. So I just assumed he'd be married and like whatever. But when I met him, so I met a few guys before him too. And I don't know, when I met him, you feel the spark that you feel when you sometimes go out on a date and you realize this is the one.
You just knew.
Yeah, I just knew, like the vibe, the comfort, it just felt like our souls were like connected in some way. And I don't know, I was like skeptical about it because I was like, okay, he's a bit older than me. He lives in a different country. How am I going to like manage work? But I think I got married into a very beautiful family who understands and who encourages my entrepreneurial spirit. And a husband who is like always on my shoulder being like, you have to work hard, you have to be focused.
Wow.
So I did get married into the right ecosystem.
So great. So is it your mom that like vetted it? Is your mom and dad?
Yeah.
Are they like the ones that say
so
like, hey?
I've known my husband's family, like I've visited their house when I was like 10.
Okay, so you've known them for a long time.
Exactly. So I don't know, it worked well.
But other suitors too, like there's like multiple marriage proposals.
Yeah. There's a few.
Like this makes my brain explode. Like I can't think
it's like speed dating.
No, but I can't think of me like just like risking it all. Like, hey, here's my marriage proposal.
Yeah.
And just like, what if they say yes?
What do you mean?
Like,
yeah, you still have to meet them, right? Like they're not gonna take you at gunpoint and be like, Casey, you come get married right now.
But so you like just start with marriage? You just start with like, hey, I'm all in.
Yeah.
And then you start dating? Like
No. So you actually start off by like over dinner. You
okay.
Just kind of like,
so you don't give the marriage proposal
no
before the meet.
No. It happens like
But you broke some people's hearts.
How?
So they met you and they were like all in, and then you said no. that dinner,
I think for good reason.
that dinner was better for you than it was for me.
Yeah. I think I've even like, found some so boring that I would just be like, how many minutes do I have left?
No.
But that's with dating normally,
but
right?
then do they send the marriage proposal? Like you're like...
No, so you have to meet like a few times and then they kind of like ask you like, how are you vibing? Where do you want to take this to? And
That's
then
so
they kind
great.
of... Yeah, so it's like you take an American dating timeline and you cut it down to like a year.
But the divorce rate's really low in India, isn't it?
It is low. It is low, but I don't know if it's the right data that we're seeing as of now because...
Is it changing?
I think it's changing. I think the divorce rate would have been super low because women were very not independent.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of women
Kind of
just
wasn't
stayed,
an option.
Yeah, and they would just stay in like bad marriages just because they didn't have an option.
Okay.
So I think divorce rate is not going to be, I think currently it's like some 9% or 10%.
That feels
or
really
something.
low.
Yeah, but I don't think it's that low, but I do think it is still low because when you go through arranged marriage, what ends up happening is your families end up being very similarly cultured. And when your families are similarly cultured, you tend to get along with everybody in a much better way.
Yeah.
You understand each other's nuances. You understand each other's like beliefs.
these customs are more ancient. And I did one of these interviews with Penny,
Okay.
who is Jewish,
Yeah.
and his was an arranged marriage, and very similar. Like the families kind of know that they're, they would get along, and they
Yeah.
kind of set up a meeting, and they get to know each other, and then they
They kind of like
get married. But these are, again, different cultures, but ancient cultures,
Yeah.
and I think about like these traditions, they've probably been going.
I think also it's not bad to take your parents' advice on who you should get married to, because, I mean, as a 25-year-old, I was quite,
Different.
yeah, I don't, I think I was, I mean, everybody's different at 25, but I think also you sometimes lack the complete maturity to make a completely 360 view, you
Yeah.
know. I mean, a lot of people lack it too.
Talk to me about Indian weddings.
Indian weddings. Indian weddings are fun. I had a COVID wedding, so I never ever wanted a big wedding. So I remember when I was very, very small. Actually, a cousin of mine recently reminded me of the story. But I think when I was like 3 or 4, maybe like 5 or 6, I was watching my parents' wedding video on like that VCR or whatever
Yeah,
you put it
yeah.
in. I think that's the only VCR I've seen in my whole life. So, so I remember watching that, and it was like, it looked like some like music festival or something, and like the artists are my dad and my mom, who's standing on stage, and then everybody's. I mean, I think that wedding had around like 6,000, 7,000 people.
What?
Yeah, I think they just invite like
Everybody.
not just and I think you end up knowing a lot of people, and it's customary to invite people that you know for the
Yeah.
wedding. So so yeah, it was crazy. And then I remember being like, that is one wedding I don't want.
You
I
didn't
was
want
like,
that?
No, I was like, I want to get married
At
in-
5 years old.
Yeah, I was like, if I'm getting married, I want to get married in a palace, in a princess outfit. I do not want to go through what you just went through. And somehow, when I'm getting married, and like my father-in-law, my mom, they're all like talking about this 5,000, 6,000 people list there, Casey. And here I'm thinking like, fuck. Like I'm like talking to my husband. I'm like, can we put a hologram? Will people be satisfied seeing our hologram? Because what you're expecting us to do was like, they were planning on giving people invitations with different marks, like red, yellow, green. And they were like, this venue is not big enough to fit everybody at the same time. So make people come in order. And I'm sitting there like being nice to my future family.
But not feeling it.
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm like thinking in my head, how do I escape out of it? I'm already thinking like my escape plan. I
Yeah.
had a few in mind.
Yeah.
But God gave me the best.
COVID.
with COVID,
Yeah.
yeah. So I got married, I think in the best way I could have. My only regret is that a few of my friends from America couldn't make it. But everybody that I really wanted to be there made it. And
The
it
most
was-
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was an intimate wedding for Indian standards. It was like maybe around 150 people or so. So it was quite small. Like
Yeah.
I was supposed to have like add a few zeros to it kind of a situation.
Some of the classmates that I've talked to are kind of, they have those weddings.
Yeah.
Thousands of people
Yeah.
and different outfits for
So I had to do the
days
different
and-
outfits and the days and so on, but it was more relaxed because I got to hang out with the people who came down for the
Yeah.
wedding. And I think our wedding ended up being one of the first like gatherings after like peak COVID, because
Yeah.
it was end of 2020.
Okay.
So like the vaccines were starting to come out, but nobody really had it yet. Fear was still there, but people were not as scared. That kind of
Yeah.
a situation. So it was not bad. I enjoyed my wedding thoroughly. So, yeah.
That's cool. One last question before we finish up. If you could go back and talk to yourself now, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself as like a young Danesa that's
So if I had to
taken
go
over the
down at
business?
like, so now if I had to go back like a few years and talk to my 23-year-old who has just graduated from college, reached India and trying to figure life out, I would be like, stay strong, continue to do what you do, be more cautious, and you'll be fine.
That's it.
Yeah.
Just be more cautious.
Yeah.
Stay strong.
Yeah. I think one of the most important things I would tell a 23-year-old me is like, just keep doing what you're doing. Like, believe in yourself. It's okay.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what I kind of struggle with the most, because as a 23-year-old, it's very difficult to get people to understand that what you're saying makes sense, to convince them, and also to, I don't know, I've lost my words.
Do you still struggle with it? Or have you got more comfortable in your own shoes and in your own decision making?
I think even back then, I was not uncomfortable with my decision making.
Yeah.
It was more to do with like convincing others that it's a better idea to listen to me.
So it's the persuasion.
Yeah.
But you've also always had confidence in yourself.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so. I think it's important to be confident.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're not confident with who you are, then you need to change something about your life.
I mean, I've noticed that. Like, even in our living group, like, you're the boss.
No.
Like, you run this town.
No, I don't.
But you do it in a very elegant way. Like, it's not abrasive, but you can tell that you believe in yourself and that you're a strong woman.
Thank you.
That you, like, make a decision and you, like, stand by your decision and you, like, argue it. And you obviously, like, have the points to back it up. And so,
I only go into arguing and putting my points across if I am completely convinced that I'm right.
Have the conviction.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have to be convinced myself that I'm right. If I'm not completely convinced that, okay, this might work, might not work, then I let others like...
More cautious.
Yeah. And I also let others like tell me, or I hear others' opinion. But when I'm convinced, then I think it takes... But no matter how convinced I am, I'm always open to being convinced otherwise.
Yeah.
By a better option. If somebody else can come and give me a better option, I'm always like, perfect. This is what I need. I'm not the kind that, my idea is the best and I should be implementing my idea.
So
my interest.
My wife, Chelsea's like a really amazing, strong woman. Mm-hmm. And I've got my three oldest kids are daughters. Mm-hmm. And I'm like just sitting here being like, I hope that they can like grow up to be like you. I'm hoping that they can have like that belief and that swagger and that conviction and that resilience. Because it isn't like to be a woman and to be a leader. It's hard to be a leader regardless. But I do think to be a woman and to be a leader, it takes more emotional muscle. Like I think
it does.
Yeah, but there's also opportunities with it,
Yes, there are opportunities with it. I think I think there's a bit of both. I wouldn't say that there are so many opportunities out there. I think even the opportunities to get to are quite hard. I think the opportunities or the ease at which men are able to do many things in the world, I think it's way more difficult for women, It could be as simple as being friendly to a guy. I've faced this in many events. Like, I would just be normal, friendly to a person, chilling like they would be my sister, even if they're a guy, because that's the way I am. I don't differentiate between genders.
Yeah.
I'm sorted with the way I think, and I'm not like too bothered. But, a lot of times I'm mistaken, and then
they take that as too friendly.
Too friendly, like, she's like interested in me. And I'm like, no, bro. I'm like, not at all. Like, what makes you even think so? Just because I smiled and said hi? Wow, our podcast is so lit
it's over.
that the fire alarm is ringing.